Okay.
Hello, this is Daphne Elliott. I'm here with Michelle Nestor, my mom, and we're going to talk about contract law basics. So, first of all, a contract is an enforceable agreement created when two or more parties agree to perform or not perform certain acts. Simply put, it's a set of legally binding promises. That's a pretty simple definition. Now, this is where stuff can get kind of hairy. All contracts have to have three basic elements. The first one is the offer. So it has to be that consists of the terms and conditions set by one party, known as the offerer, and then those conditions are presented to the other party, which is the offeree. So there has to be a formal offer happening. And then there's acceptance. So the offeree has to accept whatever the conditions are. And then there's consideration. And that's what each party gets in exchange for completing the responsibilities under the agreement. So I think that's pretty much why, like, a lot of non-compete agreements don't stand up, because they're one-sided. The consideration is not for both parties. It's only for usually the offerer at that point. And then you got a bilateral and a unilateral type of contract. Are you familiar with those terms, Mom?
Yes.
So the example they gave in our book was, like, if you buy a couch off the internet or whatever, like on a Craigslist or one of those kind of deals for a bilateral, because that means that you're giving them money and they're giving you a couch. So you're both having, a promise is given in return for a promise.
Yes.
Yeah. And then, like, a unilateral is a promise for an act. So if you say, hey, I'll pay somebody $20 to mow my yard, that's a unilateral. All right. And then we have, this is where stuff gets kind of funny too, because it's like there's expressed and implied contracts. So an expressed contract is your regular contract, where the terms of the agreement are fully and explicitly stated in words, oral or written. Right? So that's your regular contract. Now, an implied contract is when the conduct of the parties would imply the contract. So courts will find an implied contract if the following elements are met. One, the plaintiff provided some service or property. Two, the plaintiff expected to be paid for the service or property. And three, the defendant knew or should have known that payment was expected, and the defendant had an opportunity to reject the services or property and didn't. So that's where stuff can get kind of hairy.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't exactly agree, but it was expected. And if you want to make things even more confusing, there's the quasi-contract, which aren't actual contracts, rather than we treat them as contracts to avoid injustice. So the example in our textbook on this one was, for example, if your neighbor was, getting a new sprinkler system or something, and their equipment was delivered to your house, and you think, oh wow, this is a blessing, I was going to buy a new sprinkler system anyways, and then you install the sprinkler system, right? If they find out and that they can, tell that you did that, then they could actually take you to court. Now, they wouldn't be able to get what your neighbor paid for the sprinkler system, like the company that made the error and delivered it to the wrong place. They wouldn't be able to get, like, a retail cost off of you, but they would be able to recover like the cost of the equipment in court.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
It's not finders keepers.
No. Wow.
Yeah. So if something gets delivered to you by accident, you could be, I'm sure that if it was like an Amazon delivery or like something that was really cheap or whatever, that wouldn't be, worth it for them to take a person to court. But that's definitely something, if you ever run into that situation, you should question it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. And now that you have an idea of the parameters of a contract, will it change the way that you do business with others?
Not really.
Yeah. I from what I've learned from reading this chapter this week is that you should be clear in what you want and what you don't want. And if you don't like the terms, then you have to express that. You have to say no. You have to be clear in what you want to say. So, like, for example, if there was some guy that was mowing my yard and he did a bad job, and maybe I just don't call him and schedule him anymore. Legally, if he just showed up at my house as he normally would have and mowed my yard, I would be liable to him. You know what I'm saying? So it's like,
Really?
you have to say, look, you suck at your job and I don't want you to come back.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not that harsh, but yeah.
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 Hmm.
Any questions, comments, concerns?
No.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and